two pictures representing two different worldviews. And in one, trying to make yourself happy with a worldview that has no hope in it is a type of insanity. And so we flip that so that you can realize that there's another picture that can be seen differently from the first one. And so this sets up our metaphor today, which we'll explore as we get into our reading.
God established his relationship with you to make you happy, and nothing you do that does not share his purpose can be real. The purpose God ascribed to anything is its only function. Because of his reason for creating his relationship with you, the function of relationships became forever to make happy and nothing else. To fulfill this function, you relate to your creations as God to his. For nothing God created is apart from happiness, and nothing God created but would extend happiness as its creator did. Whatever does not fulfill this function cannot be real.
So in trying to understand the two pictures, I always find it easier to begin with God and God's picture of creation, for it's actually simple to understand. Because love and happiness and peace are concepts that enter easily into the mind. And so relationships are a part of God's picture for creation, along with happiness. And the Course, in its profound, all-encompassing existential statements, say that anything that's not consistent with God's purpose is not real. For in other words, if the Creator has not initiated these things and they are not extensions of his plan, then they are outside of his mind. And anything outside of his mind must be an illusion, because his mind is infinitely good. It goes on forever. So therefore, what Creator has in mind for anything is the function of that thing. Now, this is abstract language, so let's talk about you and I. The Creator had an idea in mind in creating you and I, and that idea is our function. That's the assignment, the purpose that he gave to us. And by the way, everyone shares the same function here. They're not different. And so that is our function. That's where our happiness lies. And relationships are a big part of this, because we're intended to work together on these things, not separate and apart or even opposed to each other. So I find that fairly easy. So that's the picture number one. The Creator's purpose is given assignment, a purpose to each of us, makes us happy, brings us into relationships and fulfilling that. And anything that does not fulfill this function, in Course in Miracles, we call an unreality. It's a separate idea, a mad idea of insanity, an unreality. Comments or questions you might have on that? Okay, so we're just setting up the first picture here. We'll get to the second picture shortly. Julia, did you? No? Okay.
No.
David?
In this world, it is impossible to create, yet it is possible to make happy. I have said repeatedly that the Holy Spirit would not deprive you of your special relationships, but would transform them. And all that is meant by that is that he will restore to them the function given them by God. The function you have given them is clearly not to make happy, but the holy relationship shares God's purpose rather than aiming to make a substitute for it. Every special relationship you have made is a substitute for God's will and glorifies yours instead of his because of the illusion that they are different. You have made very real relationships even in this world. Yet you do not recognize them because you have raised their substitutes to such predominance that when truth calls to you, as it does constantly, you answer with a substitute. Every special relationship you have made has as its fundamental purpose the aim of occupying your mind so completely that you will not hear the call of truth.
Mm-hmm. So in understanding the second picture, it's very helpful to think of it as a substitute for the first picture. The ego would substitute a different plan, a different perspective for the creator's plan and perspective. And so that's where things start rolling downhill, and special relationships become the focal point of the ego's plan to create a substitute for the creator's plan in your mind. And this operates in the domain of relationships. So let's assume for a minute that we are in a special relationship already. It should be emphasized again and again, and it has been emphasized repeatedly, that the Holy Spirit would not deprive you of special relationships. It's not trying to take away special relationships, but trying to repurpose them, to transform them into relationships that fulfill the plan and purpose that God gave to all relationships. Trying to change them from their ego specialness into God's consistent equality. And then that brings with it, when that transformation happens, that brings with it the attributes of a holy relationship. And so it's the two pictures, God's plan, ego's plan, involve two different ways of relating, God's way, the ego's way. And the ego's way will always attempt to substitute for God's way. Yet, and it says so this is profound, every special relationship your ego has made has as its fundamental purpose the aim of occupying your mind so completely that you'll not hear the call of truth. It's a substitute for the call of truth. And that's one of the reasons why it can have addictive properties to it. It has properties that can thrill the mind so much that it becomes preoccupied and obsessed with the idea of the relationship. Why? So that you will not hear the call of truth. And so in a holy relationship, we still hear the call of truth. So talking now about a holy relationship, a transformed special relationship transforms into a holy relationship, we hear again the call of truth and see the relationship in the light of what truth calls us to. So keep in mind the word substitute. It's an ego substitute for a bigger plan. David, your hand's up.
Yeah, I'm just a little confused by this sentence. In this world, it is impossible to create, because we talk about our creations and that every loving thought, whenever we're expressing love, we're extending. And what do they mean by that?
I like your question, David. I struggled and pondered that ahead of time. So here's what I'm going to offer: that you can create in time inside the holy mind of the Holy Spirit. True? You can love and feel peace inside the mind of the Holy Spirit, but inside the world of the ego, it's impossible to do those things. That's where I'm at with it. So, because remember, and this is not inconsistent with Course of Miracles, there are two pictures and two worlds. And inside the Holy Spirit wants death and revenge and vengeance and all. It's impossible to create in a framework, a mindset, a world such as that. So this is also an opportunity to pause and understand what the Course in Miracles means by the world, where it does not refer to the planet. On this planet is impossible to create. A world is used in the sense that author Schopenhauer used it, which is each of us walks around with our own understanding of the world. A world is a worldview, a perception. It's the people, those who people your world. In this sense, every ego has his own world, his own structure that he set up in his separate mind that is composed of its own stories and issues and struggles and everything. So in that world, it is impossible to create. Do you have any follow-up on that, David, or is that?
No, as long as we make that distinction, and because I didn't see that necessarily referenced to something earlier.
I didn't either.
Okay.
I didn't either. That's why it took a little bit more of those gymnastics there to untangle it. Kathy?
So if we change the world from a small w to a large W, capital W, then we could create, right? And our function is to create like in heaven or the capital W.
Yes.
And then our function on earth or the little w is healing, is it not? Isn't that what the Course says?
You are absolutely right, Kathy.
Yeah.
So say that again so that everybody else gets it.
Okay, so our function here in the world, little w, ego world, is to heal. Our function in the world, capital W, heaven, is to create with God.
Is to create with God, and that we will do full time. The question really then becomes, in the real world, the world illuminated by the Holy Spirit and the vision of Christ, do we create in that world? And I insist that we do. These are technicalities, though, So we should at the same time say that A Course in Miracles, we are not trying to create a theology where we definitively lay out the precision rules of do's and don'ts here and there. The purpose is to free us of the ego, and everything else will take care of itself if we free our minds of the ego. So we allow for some room of interpretation there. Thank you, Kathy. Susie, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to say something similar to that, that it's odd that it isn't capitalized, because we sometimes say, why isn't something capitalized and why isn't it? And you often say, it's just the way that it is sometimes. And we don't have to make that much out of it, right? Because then the following sentence says, yet it is possible to make happy.
In this
So
world.
I feel like it follows. You know, I think it's alluding to exactly what Kathy said, but, you know,
Yeah.
it's just one of those.
It's ambiguous. And we know through reading the Course, many times there are references that are not crystal clear and spelled out. They involve interpretation. This is purposeful. By the way, he talks about this in clarification of terms, because theologians have spent thousands of years arguing around a sentence and its meaning, and split, never to meet again, because they couldn't agree on the use of the words in one sentence. I'm referring to the Council of Nicaea and the Filoque doctrine of the Trinity. So they argue and split and separate based on understandings of words. So the Course in Miracles comes along and sidesteps all that and leaves a degree of ambiguity involved. Only one more point I wanted to make. The capitalization was added by the editors after, prior to publication. So when Helen took notes, she was not told capitalize this word, don't capitalize that word. That those were editorial choices that are helpful, but should not be thought of as like a doctrine. You know, when will this be capitalized and when will that not be capitalized? So hold that loosely. We'll go on. Thank you for your comments.
In a sense, the special relationship was the ego's answer to the creation of the Holy Spirit, who was God's answer to the separation. For although the ego did not understand what had been created, it was aware of threat. The whole defense system the ego evolved to protect the separation from the Holy Spirit was in response to the gift with which God blessed it, and by his blessing enabled it to be healed. This blessing holds within itself the truth about everything. And the truth is that the Holy Spirit is in close relationship with you, because in him is your relationship with God restored to you. The relationship with him has never been broken, because the Holy Spirit has not been separate from anyone since the separation. And through him have all your holy relationships been carefully preserved to serve God's purpose for you.
Mm-hmm. I find this very comforting. The Holy Spirit has not been separate from anyone. And through the Holy Spirit, all your holy relationships, which is your relationships with everyone, have been carefully preserved. They are intact. It's our awareness that needs to return to that understanding, because the separation in reality never happened. In the Holy Spirit's mind, everything is still whole and intact. And so we're to return our mind to that awareness. So that's the true picture. Here's the other picture from the ego side, is having been the Holy Spirit gifting all that to us, the ego comes up with a counter device to all that. And its counter device, in a sense, is the special relationship meant to create a substitute for the Holy Spirit's gifts. And with that come a series of psychological defense mechanisms that are used by the ego to keep the truth out of your awareness. These are the barriers to the awareness of love's presence. They show up in the form of defense mechanisms such as denial, dissociation. I'm not going to be able to list them. It's the 12 defense mechanisms that we've talked about in chapter 2. And for most people, they're unconsciously practiced to keep the ego's picture intact and keep the truth out. It would be a loss of the ego's identity to lower the defenses and allow the truth in. So the ego feels afraid of that. And as it says, the ego was aware of threat and conjured up these defense mechanisms to protect itself from the Holy Spirit and give you a false identity instead. But the truth is that those ego devices are not enduring. They are brief, transient, delusional episodes in the mind, and eventually all of that goes away and we return our mind to the truth. Let's go on. David?
The ego is always alert to threat. And the part of your mind into which the ego was accepted is very anxious to preserve its reason as it sees it. It does not realize that it is totally insane. And you must realize just what this means if you would be restored to sanity. The insane protect their thought systems, but they do so insanely. And all their defenses are as insane as what they are supposed to protect. The separation has nothing in it, no part, no reason, and no attribute that is not insane. And its protection is part of it, as insane as the whole. The special relationship, which is its chief defense, must therefore be insane.
Yes, the idea of creating a substitute for your experience of heaven, trying to find a temporary substitute in one other person that creates a unique and separate bond with that one person, is premised on a series of insane thoughts. And so the message that I get from this is you must realize just what this means if you would be restored to sanity. For in other words, this is the basis of the course. You must look at this insanity and make a decision to reject it and not allow it to come and visit in your consciousness, not allow it to live in the house of your mind. You must see it for what it is and reject the ego's insane thought system. Otherwise, if you tolerate it, you will become a product of its insane thinking in one form or another. This might sound like a hard line against the ego. It is. To allow the ego to, even if, okay, I'll be using a metaphor, even if you allow the ego to live in the garage, he's still on your property. It's still living on your property, and that will have an effect. Sooner or later, he'll be living in the house. So that's why it's necessary. You must realize just what this means if you would be restored to sanity. All right, we have a lot to read tonight, so I am moving through this a little faster.
You have but little difficulty now in realizing that the thought system the special relationship protects is but a system of delusions. You recognize, at least in general terms, that the ego is insane. Yet the special relationship still seems to you somehow to be different. Yet we have looked at it far closer than we have at many other aspects of the ego's thought system that you have been more willing to let go. While this one remains, you will not let the others go, for this one is not different. Retain this one, and you have retained the whole.
Wow. That last line, 2 lines. If you retain the belief that you can find your own, make a heaven of your own within a special relationship, then what you have done is retain the entire illusion. And so I think I need to clarify, just to go on the record, the Course in Miracles is not against marriages or partnerships or long-term relationships. That nowhere is it critical of people being in love and partnering. What it is it focuses on the purpose of the relationship. And many people have no idea, other than it feels good, why they're in a relationship. And so the Holy Spirit would not, as we read earlier, would not take away your special relationship, but would repurpose it so that it's consistent with her picture of life and of the world, because otherwise, retaining that different picture in that special relationship winds up hooking you in to the worldview of the ego, and then that's an obstacle to peace. Felicia?
Yeah, what I get out of this, or what it says to me, is it takes what I in the past considered the special relationship, where I looked for my fulfillment in another person outside of myself.
Mhm.
And take it, and Holy Spirit takes that special relationship and helps you to enjoy the partnership, but realize that you get your fulfillment from within, from your Holy Spirit. And so that's the difference to me of what the special relationship has changed into a holy relationship.
Very nice. Very nice. Nicely said, Felicia. Thank you. We'll go on, David.
It is essential to realize that all defenses do what they would defend. The underlying basis for their effectiveness is that they offer what they defend. What they defend is placed in them for safekeeping, and as they operate, they bring it to you. Every defense operates by giving gifts, and the gift is always a miniature of the thought system the defense protects, set in a golden frame. The frame is very elaborate, all set with jewels and deeply carved and polished. Its purpose is to be of value in itself and to divert your attention from what it encloses. But the frame without the picture you cannot have. Defenses operate to make you think you can.
So a lot of discussion about defenses here. And it needs to be said because people are generally unconscious when they're using their psychological defense systems. And in doing so, they don't realize that the shadows in their own mind, they're protecting them. They're keeping them. And so they're actually retaining loyalty to the thought system that lies in the shadows of their mind. And it's a miniature of the thought system the defense protects, set in a golden frame. And so here's our metaphor for tonight. There's actually, it's a double metaphor, but it's the idea of the picture and a frame. And there are two different pictures and two different frames, but let's handle one at a time now. What is the picture? The picture is the essence. It's the thing that's important. It's the thing that's vital. Like if you buy a masterpiece, you buy the picture. It's not that you're paying millions of dollars for a frame, you're paying it for the picture. However, in this metaphor, the frame is intended to distract you, to wow you, to occupy your mind so that you lose perspective on the importance of the picture. It distracts you. This is what a defense system does. It deflects your attention away from the real issue and draws your attention elsewhere, to the outer. So that's the first metaphor, a picture in a frame. However, we have two pictures here in two frames. One of them is a picture of heaven. The other is a picture, if you will, of hell. Both have frames, all right? In the picture of heaven, the frame is unimportant. The picture means everything. In the picture of hell, it's a delusion of which the ego will invite you to get all excited about by putting a beautiful frame around the picture of hell and making it attractive to you and trying to get you to accept it. So in many ways, this is a metaphor for what defenses do. They keep your attention away from the content, the essence, and have you look at the form. It's a distraction device for the ego so that you won't see clearly what's involved in falling into the special relationship mythology. So take a look at this image. And now I found this on the internet. This doesn't come from Course in Miracles. I found it helpful though. And do not allow the frame to deceive you. The frame of reference for any thought can obscure the actual content of the thought. It's a deceptive frame of reference that we're talking about. The ego will use this to lure you in, to attract you into its plan. David?
The special relationship has the most imposing and deceptive frame of all the defenses the ego uses. Its thought system is offered here, surrounded by a frame so heavy and so elaborate that the picture is almost obliterated by its imposing structure. Into the frame are woven all sorts of fanciful and fragmented illusions of love, set with dreams of sacrifice and self-aggrandizement, and interlaced with gilded threads of self-destruction. The glitter of blood shines like rubies, and the tears are faceted like diamonds and gleam in the dim light in which the offering is made. Look at the picture. Do not let the frame distract you. This gift is given you for your damnation, and if you take it, you will believe that you are damned. You cannot have the frame without the picture. What you value is the frame, for there you see no conflict. Yet the frame is only the wrapping for the gift of conflict. The frame is not the gift. Be not deceived by the most superficial aspects of this thought system, for these aspects enclose the whole, complete in every aspect. Death lies in this glittering gift. Let not your gaze dwell on the hypnotic gleaming of the frame. Look at the picture and realize that death is offered you. That's pretty heavy.
The language is strong, for sure. So we certainly want to make allowance that a person could read, David, that was a beautiful reading, by the way, that a person could read this and come up with more than one way of understanding it. So I'll offer a way that is suitable to my understanding, but in no way does that limit anyone else's understanding. And so remember, there's a picture of heaven, where, not in this paragraph, but elsewhere, there is a picture of heaven with its frame. So you can think as though we're at an auction and there are these pictures for sale. But now the ego's got a picture in a beautiful gilded frame, and it wants you to spend all your money on this picture. And so it's put it around with diamonds and rubies, all in the frame, so as to wow you and fascinate your mind with the promises that of owning this picture. But the price is that you're going to invest your life into this frame of reference, and the cost is going to be that you're not going to be available for investing in heaven because you've chosen to invest in this picture. And so as a result, you miss the chance to invest in your own heaven. And therefore, what is the price of that, David? The price is you miss out on your own happiness, because we were wowed by the frame and forgot to look closely at the content of the thought system that was being offered by the ego. And while this may seem very dramatic and powerful, we would submit billions of people have invested this way, billions of people. So it's not unheard of. So that's one interpretation. Susie?
So, yeah, I have to agree. I think David should do voiceovers, actually. It was really intense. It was like listening to him narrate a movie or something. But, you know, when he said, wow, this was intense, and you said about, you know, I think it's amazing, because what it's really saying is, this is effed up. This ego and all this stuff is not good. And for me, it landed for me like, oh my God, I don't want these rubies. I don't want this stuff. This is all fake and phony and really damnation. Like, I found these, what's the word? Very helpful to not let the ego hang around in my garage. It's scary. I don't want that ego hanging around anywhere, you know? Anyway, I thought they were amazing paragraphs and found them helpful. And David, yeah, that was great.
All right, David, we're keeping you around for the rest of the class here. Well, we'll let you read
Thank you.
the next one.
Thank you all for your kind words. That is why the holy instant is so important in the defense of truth. The truth itself needs no defense, but you do need defense against your acceptance of the gift of death. When you who are truth accept an idea so dangerous to truth, you threaten truth with destruction. And your defense must now be undertaken to keep truth whole. The power of heaven, the love of God, the tears of Christ, and the joy of his eternal spirit are marshaled to defend you from your own attack. For you attack them, being part of them, and they must save you, for they love themselves.
Yeah, so this is quite the paragraph. So the holy instant is important in the defense of truth. So we need to unpack that a little bit. So defenses, now we'll talk about the bigger picture. Defenses can be used by the ego. They can also be used by the Holy Spirit. So defenses are not all bad. The ones that you hear about in pop psychology and that you frequently hear about are ego defenses. And yes, they are used for people to hide their problems. So yes, that's true. But they have another purpose in the hands of the Holy Spirit. It's a repurposing of the things that you and I have made, but now for the purpose of the Holy Spirit. And she uses it to defend that which is good and true and beautiful in your awareness. The truth doesn't need defense. But it needs to be defended in your awareness so that you don't lose awareness of it. And so, so now we're talking about the correction here. Your defense must be undertaken to keep the truth whole in your mind. Otherwise, if you fall for the trap of the ego and invest heavily in its thought system, you can only invest in one thought system. And by investing in the ego's thought system, your mind will attack the thought system of the Holy Spirit. You can only be loyal to one master, not two masters. And so that is the real price that we pay by being fascinated with what the ego's ideas offer. This is the big price, as your mind then becomes in opposition to the love of God. Not necessarily, at that deeper level of the unconscious, fear becomes your friend. Death well, it's the whole ego thought system, including a fact of the love of death, of which we're not going to talk about tonight, but we will talk about it in chapters to follow. So the holy instant, so let's have an interim summary here. So what are we to make of all this? Pictures and frames and poor investments and better investments and defenses, that the holy instant is your gift. It defends your mind from living according to a lie. It calls it a miniature of heaven. And the more you invest in it, the more certain you become of its reality. This is where the workbook lessons would invite you to return your attention to these thoughts daily, frequently, to look at them more. And so it convinces your mind of their value and of their reality. David?
The holy instant is a miniature of heaven, sent you from heaven. It is a picture too, set in a frame. Yet if you accept this gift, you will not see the frame at all, because the gift can only be accepted through your willingness to focus all your attention on the picture. The holy instant is a miniature of eternity. It is a picture of timelessness set in a frame of time. If you focus on the picture, you will realize that it was only the frame that made you think it was a picture. Without the frame, the picture is seen as what it represents. For as the whole thought system of the ego lies in its gifts, so the whole of heaven lies in this instant, borrowed from eternity and set in time for you.
Mm-hmm. So now we have the second picture in very clearly described. There's a frame and there's a picture. The picture is the holy instant, a picture of heaven, a miniature of eternity. So it's timeless, but it's within a frame of time. You experience the holy instant in the reference frame of time. Today, you can experience it. But what you experience is a miniature of heaven there. And if you focus on the picture, now there's an if, that's a choice. If you focus on the miniature of the holy instant, the miniature of heaven, it starts to transform in your understanding. It's like a camera that's out of focus and you bring it into sharp focus. It comes clearer and clearer. And so you look beyond the frame of time, and the picture as seen as what it represents. It represents the entire experience of heaven. We would say it's holographic. All of heaven is in there. You may only see an aspect of it initially that's not in clear focus. But if you focus on the picture, and you might need to do this for days and weeks and months, gradually you will realize that it's more than just a picture. It is a miniature of heaven itself. This is another way of saying it's a reality and not just a picture. because it's a heavenly, these are not just image, they start to appear as images, and then they transform via the gifts of the Holy Spirit into something much greater than that. Susie?
Yeah, because, well, for me, I would say that a holy instant, you know, is filled with freedom and relief and at one minute. So that's a glimpse of heaven. You know, if something is going on with me and it's an ego defense, right? And I'm willing, you said, if before in one of the paragraphs, if I'm willing to look or whatever,
Mhm.
and sometimes, you know, and if I ask the Holy Spirit for help, oh, that's what that is. Oh, that's nothing. And that's that holy instant. And it's just the most amazing feeling. And it's a complete relief and freedom from that egoic thought that was encompassing my mind.
Yes.
And I want to even say, like, what even was that? It's like gone. Like, what was that? You know, it's not real. But this moment that I'm experiencing is real because it can stay. You know, it's so beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you, Susie. That expresses it for all of us. So we've got these ingredients, this miniature of eternity of heaven, a frame set in time, but soon the frame, as you focus on the picture, the unimportance of the frame fades away. And Susie, you're referring to this. For me, it's like it's an impression of great spaciousness, of not being limited in size and in scope, but all encompassing. And I'm not saying that I see this, it's a feeling of this includes everything in that moment. There's nothing that's excluded. So your practice is to focus on the picture that the Holy Instant offers. Because if you focus, you will realize that it's more than just a picture. Julia?
Yeah, so it's out of space and time.
Oh, yeah.
So the frame would be time, but time disappears.
Exactly. The frame becomes unimportant. It's a starting point, a frame of reference. We begin there, and then quickly it dissipates as not being meaningful. Just a passing form. Yep. Very good. Jane?
The holy instant for me is that there are no bodies, there is no separation, and there is no guilt. And guilt is the main thing that keeps us in the ego, is guilt. And once we can let go of it or look at it as being nothing, then whatever else we're seeing through our mind is going to be truth.
Yes.
And that's all it's going to be. And I'm sure that when you have the holy instant, and I'm sure Susie was describing this so beautifully, is that when she was in the holy instant, I bet if she were to reflect back on that, she would not feel guilt. She would not have seen a body. And there would have been no separation. And it's, you know, it just seems so beautiful that that is what the holy instant is. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jane. Yeah, it's like we were reading yesterday. It's a selective, there's a filtering, and the Holy Spirit has decided what's allowed in the holy instant. And as you said, Jane, there's guilt, separation, bodies. The Holy Spirit has filtered all that out, and what remains are only loving thoughts. Yeah. Okay, so David?
Two gifts are offered you. Each is complete and cannot be partially accepted. Each is a picture of all that you can have, seen very differently. You cannot compare their value by comparing a picture to a frame. It must be the pictures only that you compare, or the comparison is wholly without meaning. Remember that it is the picture that is the gift, and only on this basis are you really free to choose. Look at the pictures, both of them. One is a tiny picture, hard to see at all beneath the heavy shadows of its enormous and disproportionate enclosure. The other is lightly framed and hung in light, lovely to look upon for what it is.
And we're going to keep going there, David.
You who have tried so hard and are still trying to fit the better picture into the wrong frame and so combine what cannot be combined, accept this and be glad. These pictures are each framed perfectly for what they represent. One is framed to be out of focus and not seen. The other is framed for perfect clarity. The picture of darkness and of death grows less convincing as you search it out amid its wrappings. As each senseless stone that seems to shine from the frame in darkness is exposed to light, it becomes dull and lifeless and ceases to distract you from the picture. And finally, you look upon the picture itself, seeing at last that, unprotected by the frame, it has no meaning.
Mhm. So they added a twister in here. So, let's assume that we all fall in love with the beautiful frame and fail to notice the picture, fell for the ego strategy. You have tried so hard and are still trying. So here's the twister. We're going to remember that picture of heaven that the Holy Spirit has? We're going to take that picture and try to put it in the lovely frame that we're going to take the lovely picture of heaven and try to put it in that frame with all the diamonds and the jewels. I didn't see this coming, and I'm not sure I have an interpretation of that, but I think that's all what we did, is we tried to have heaven reframed using the frame of our own choosing. For in other words, the holy instant, talking the truth now, the picture of heaven comes in this very modest frame. It's really not spectacular at all. And in fact, that frame soon fades in unimportance. And that's what the spiritual path is let the form, the outer frame of reference fade, but don't lose sight of the content, the truth, the gift the Holy Spirit would offer. But in ego land, the twister, we're going to take that heavenly picture, which is so attractive, and try to put it inside a frame of reference that we've decided would be better. And that would be, in this case, a frame of reference would be the special relationship with all its glittering, with all its glitter. So I think this is a lovely twist on our story here, and I'm sure we could sit around a campfire and talk about all the meanings that has. Julia?
So what comes to me is that if I keep my mind with the Holy Spirit, my relationships will be holy.
Oh, yes. Yes. even the framework of those relationships will cease to matter, because only the holiness of the relationship will matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Susie?
Yeah, and to follow up on that, I love this sentence that because this that says the picture of darkness and of death grows less convincing as you search it out amid its wrappings. It's just it all just starts to slip away and not matter as much. You know, the more I know for me that I do the work, it's like what I used to value, just don't value so much anymore. And it just slips away. And it's actually like a really lovely feeling. Like it's just going away. You know, it's like a promise. You just do the work, you know, and it's senseless. It just all makes so much sense, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that feeling you're talking about, Susie, the word I give it is it's the coming on of grace. It's a feeling that grace is enough. I don't need this fancy, elaborate framework that would wow people so much. The loveliness of grace is all I really need. It's what I hold in my heart. All right. Thank you, David.
The other picture is lightly framed, for time cannot contain eternity. There is no distraction here. The picture of heaven and eternity grows more convincing as you look at it. And now, by real comparison, a transformation of both pictures can at last occur, and each is given its rightful place when both are seen in relation to each other. The dark picture brought to light is not perceived as fearful, but the fact that it is just a picture is brought home at last. And what you see there, you will recognize as what it is, a picture of what you thought was real and nothing more. For beyond this picture, you will see nothing.
Mhm. So we emphasized before, our role is to look at the picture, because the picture of heaven and eternity grows more convincing if you look at it. As you look at it, this is why the workbook lessons keep us looking for that holy instant, that picture of eternity, that picture of peace. And then you are actually alluding to this, Susie, in some of your comments. Now the two pictures, a transformation begins of both pictures at last occurs, and you start to see more clearly, start to see where the value really lies. And that the dark picture, this is where they then minimize it. The dark picture is not really fearful anymore. It's just a picture that was not helpful. It's brought home at last, made clear to your mind. Literally, as one starts to dismiss the ego, it's not out of anger, it's merely out of disinterest. Not interested in that anymore, which is why grace is so lovely. When people walk in grace, is just that their attention is focused on that which has real meaning and depth and richness, and they're not distracted anymore by the dark picture, nor are they afraid. David?
The picture of light in clear cut and unmistakable contrast is transformed into what lies beyond the picture. As you look on this, you realize that it is not a picture, but a reality. This is no figured representation of a thought system, but the thought itself. What it represents is there. The frame fades gently, and God rises to your remembrance, offering you the whole of creation in exchange for your little picture, wholly without value and entirely deprived of meaning.
So this is, thank you all for your patience in getting to this point, because we've emphasized several times, as you look at this picture, that's your task. What happens then is a transformation occurs. Here, initially, our little mind was looking at a picture and maybe not entirely clearly. We were looking at a representation of a thought system. But through the transforming power of the mind of the Holy Spirit, she sees it as a reality, not as a picture. And our perception unites with her perception. And now it's no longer a representation, but a reality. And so this could be referring to the last step, where the frame fades gently and God rises to your remembrance, offering you the whole of creation, of which is gladly received at this point, with no barriers, in exchange for your little picture. So yeah, so you're looking, as you look at the picture, is for a reason. There's a promise here of looking at this miniature of heaven. There's a gift that is beyond this world that awaits us. Vian?
Do we have time? Are we
Yeah.
almost done, right? Yeah, okay.
Good.
All right, good. So this visual, so many things. My God, this course is just so fantastic with the visuals for me, because it's so alive. It's so picturesque, right? So, you know, those, okay, let me just slow down. Imagine, I don't know, 1890 or something, or 1840, whatever, just a traveler, and all he has is a locket of his loved one, a photo, right? Like when photos first started, and it was, he carries it, he can see and then remember and recall, right? Like that's that kind of remembering. Like this picture wants us to remember.
Yes.
God has provided the locket so we can look at it. Okay. Fast forward, like, I was even thinking of like Back to the Future, where the in the picture the person erases or whatever. I'm like, no, that's not it. So what I got was, have you ever been to like things remembered in the mall, and they can put holographic photographs inside little brick things, little crystal things, and it literally looks like it's real. It's like the world, it's that person, and they do it for loved ones and so on and so forth. So like, what the message, the way I'm receiving it is like, it's not just a locket I'm giving you to help you remember. It's the real thing. Like you will step inside, and that world will then become the real world. Like that is the real world. You think you're looking at this holographic thing and things remembered, but it's real. It's going to come alive, and that's the promise. That's it's more real than I could ever imagine
Mhm.
until it becomes real, and then I don't have to imagine it anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, really beautiful. Yeah, the Course says that everyone works with symbols of some sort, whether it be a locket, a picture, an image, a word, a song, a movie. It can be whatever forms your symbols work. Many people wear, it's common in religious circles to wear a necklace with their religious symbol on their neck. And so however that shows up, the Course, it's a human thing that we do that. We carry these symbols and give them importance. And so Holy Spirit works with what you give her. She takes those symbols that we gave meaning to, and then she repurposes those symbols into a meaning that she gives them. And the same thing with the picture in here. Here we thought we were looking at a miniature of heaven, and then it becomes repurposed into something way beyond the picture. Now it's a reality. Now it's now it's the whole of creation that becomes exchanged for our little picture. So the symbols, we're not against symbols. That's part of the human communication modality. We are in favor of allowing those symbols to be repurposed according to the plan of wholeness and of union with the Creator. And the Course of Miracles is a masterpiece in repurposing those symbols. David?
As God ascends into his rightful place and you to yours, you will experience again the meaning of relationship and know it to be true. Let us ascend in peace together to the Father by giving him ascendance in our minds. We will gain everything by giving him the power and the glory and keeping no illusions of where they are. They are in us through his ascendance. What he has given is his. It shines in every part of him, as in the whole. The whole reality of your relationship with him lies in our relationship to one another. The holy instant shines alike on all relationships, for in it they are one. For here is only healing, already complete and perfect. For here is God, and where he is, only the perfect and complete can be.
I'm astonished at the beauty of all that. So I'm without words there. So 2 pictures. Our task is to daily look at the picture of heaven, however that would appear to you, and continue to look at that, not allow ourselves to be distracted by other frames of reference. Linda, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I think the most important sentence in this paragraph for me is the whole reality of your relationship with him lies in our relationship to one another. And that reminds me of the line later on that the temple of the Holy Spirit is not the body. The temple of the Holy Spirit is relationship. So that's how important
Yeah.
relationships are.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah, it really is. The course is amazingly all-encompassing. It would invite us to unite with everything and everyone. That's a pretty tall order, but it's already been done. It merely invites you to join the party, not to make it happen, but just to come join. David, you had your hand up?
I did, because something that Vianne said before kind of struck with me. And she talked about the locket, you know, and we see those old movies and we see things and representations of people carrying the locket with the picture of whomever. And I extended it even further into people that wear a crucifix, or people that wear a Star of David, or some symbol of whatever their belief is and where they're putting their thoughts and their energies. And it's not in that locket, it's not that person in its form and everything that we're carrying with us, but it is their soul and spirit that we're imbued with, that represents, and that keeps it close to us. And that's the relationship that was just brought up about each one of us, you know, that our relationship to one another. And though I might carry a particular image as that relationship to one another, it's symbolic of that whole thing. It's the small light in the frame disappears. And when I have that feeling, and I extend that to as far as I can, and I'm going to say I'm an extremely limited person, individual, in extending that to the sonship, but I get it and I feel it, and that was a great example of it for me to connect with that, the thought itself, not the symbol of the thought.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's a major importance in this program. Thank you. Julia?
Go back to that picture of the angels. It looks like the angels, they're overlooking the dark and they're looking to the light that shines on the earth.
Yeah. Yeah. And so since the locket was such a powerful metaphor, you know, in the 20th century and even to today, many men go off to war, young men. And oftentimes, before they go away, they get engaged or marry someone. And David, they carry a picture of that loved one with them off to war, and war can be hell. And I really got this, that many times when you'd be almost ready to give up and lose all hope of life, you hold on to that symbol of being back in the arms of your loved one. And it's not in the object, obviously. It's in the, as you said, the soul and the spirit of that person, of the possibility of returning back to that keeps one alive, keeps one going, even in the face of great obstacles. And so these symbols can be very powerful, very powerful. Matter of fact, one of my most favorite books of all time, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, was exactly about he and others being in Nazi Germany concentration camps, and many people dying because they gave up, because they lost all hope. And Viktor Frankl, having reflected years later about the will to live, about finding some meaning to keep going, even when nobody else wanted to keep going. They were ready to just surrender their life. These symbols can be extremely motivating in life. And so the course is really inviting each of us to find a symbol and look at it. It doesn't even, for me, I don't have a visible object. It's an internal, for me, it's an internal picture, but to find a symbol that to you represents a miniature of heaven, and then keep that in your heart when you're inclined to give up, or when you're discouraged, keep that symbol in your mind, because it can change and transform into something much greater than the original symbol. So that's all the reading we're going to do today. Thank you all. This was another powerful session. Thank you. Thank you, David, for reading. Thank you all for your sharing and your kindness and opening your heart and soul and being who you are. Look forward to our time again together next time. Namaste.
Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you, Jonica.
God,
Thanks,
all.
everybody.
So much.
Thanks for reading, David. Excellent.
Thanks.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, everybody, thank you.